You know that feeling when one message, one tone of voice, one look, snaps you out of yourself. A coworker makes a lazy joke in a meeting. Your partner sighs when you walk into the kitchen. Someone cuts you off in traffic and stares at you like it was your fault. 10 seconds earlier you were fine. Now your jaw is tight, your mind is racing, and you're halfway into a reaction you didn't actually choose. That's what happens when you keep taking the bait of every trigger around you. Most people in modern North American life live like this by default. Work chat apps ping all day. Your phone lights up with news, invoices, family texts, dating apps, and passive-aggressive messages that sound fine but feel off. At home, you're tired and overstimulated, so any small comment about money, chores, or plans for the weekend can feel like an attack. You promise yourself you'll stay calm next time, and the next time comes, and the same argument happens again, just with different details, over and over again. The Stoics were obsessed with this exact problem: how to live in a noisy, irritating world without becoming a puppet of other people's words and moods. They didn't have Slack or group chats, but they had crowded streets, demanding bosses, unfair leaders, and family drama. Their solution was ruthless emotional clarity: separate what hits you from what you do next. You can't control the trigger, but you can train how you respond to it. In this lesson, that's our goal. You and I are going to take your triggers seriously, not as something to feel ashamed of, but as signals that can be mapped, understood, and managed. You'll learn to notice the early physical signs that you're being hooked, to create a small pause before you act, and to redirect your energy into choices that actually support the kind of life you want. As Marcus notes in Meditations 5.20, the insult or shock itself is not the real damage. The damage comes from the story you tell yourself afterward. Here's the frame for everything we're about to do: educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, or legal advice. This is a practical skill-building session, not therapy or a diagnosis. The focus is on what you can practice today in normal, messy situations: at your desk, on the train, in your car, in the grocery store, or on your couch scrolling at midnight. By the time we're done, you'll walk away with 3 specific tools you can use this week. First, you'll build a simple trigger map so you can see your patterns instead of just feeling overwhelmed by them. Next, you'll craft and test a pause phrase that fits your personality, something you can actually say or think in the moment to slow everything down. Then, you'll learn a redirect move that turns that fired up energy into something constructive, not explosive. After that, we'll walk through a real-life scenario that shows how these pieces work together. And finally, we'll wrap up with a short recap and a few concrete actions you can take today to start responding instead of reacting. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. The first move is to stop treating your triggers as random accidents and start treating them as data. The claim here is simple: if you can see your predictable hotspots on paper, they stop feeling like proof that you're broken and start looking like situations you can prepare for. Mapping your triggers doesn't remove emotion, it gives emotion less power to surprise and hijack you. This works because your nervous system loves patterns. The same kinds of comments, tones, or situations tend to fire you up again and again, especially around status, respect, money, and belonging. When you only notice them in the middle of a blow-up, your brain links the idea of being triggered with losing control. When you see them calmly, after the fact, your brain links those same triggers with reflection and choice. Over time, that link makes it easier to insert space the next time the pattern shows up. Here's a simple line you can use as a mental starting point: something in this moment is poking an old pattern. Let me write it down later instead of acting on it now. You're not denying the feeling. You're postponing the reaction so you can study it with a cooler head. Imagine you're on a Zoom call with your manager and teammates. You've worked hard on a slide deck, and your manager barely looks at it before brushing it aside and moving on. Your face heats up. You want to defend yourself, or shut down, or send a sarcastic message to a coworker afterwards. Instead of taking the bait, you quietly notice that this is one of your respect triggers. Later that day, you open the Notes app on your phone and write, "Trigger, work contributions dismissed quickly, especially on calls." Physical signs: heat in face, tight chest. Usual reaction: defensive comments or withdrawal. The moment is now part of a map, not just another explosion you regret. You can do the same thing at home. You might realize that every time your partner mentions money at the end of the month, you feel a rush of shame and anger before you even hear their actual words. Or every time your teenager rolls their eyes, you feel disrespected in a way that reminds you of how your own parents spoke to you. Seeing these patterns in writing helps you separate this specific person, right now, from the whole category of situations where you already feel sensitive. Your tiny action for today is straightforward. Before you go to bed tonight, write down 3 moments from the last week where you felt yourself get hooked: a comment, a text, a look, a bill, a notification. For each one, jot down what happened, what you felt in your body, and what you usually do next. That's the beginning of your trigger map. Now that you're treating triggers as data, the next move is to separate what actually happened from the story you tell yourself about it. The claim is this: most of the emotional fire comes not from the event itself but from the meaning you attach to it in the first 3 seconds. If you can tease apart what I saw or heard from what I decided it meant, your reactions become less automatic and more deliberate. This works because your mind is a fast storyteller. The moment something hits you, your brain races to fill in gaps. She thinks I'm incompetent, he doesn't care about me, they're trying to embarrass me, I always get overlooked. Those thoughts aren't evil, they're quick guesses from past experiences. As Epictetus points out in the Enchiridion, it's our judgments that disturb us, more than the things themselves. When you practice naming the bare facts first, you weaken the fuse that leads straight from trigger to blow up. Here's a simple script you can use in your head: the fact is X. The story I'm tempted to tell is Y. I don't have to act on that story. By splitting fact and story into separate lines, you give yourself just enough distance to choose what to do next instead of letting the first thought run the show. Picture this: you send an email to a client around 9 a.m. You check your inbox at noon. No response. By 3 p.m., your mind is buzzing: they hate the proposal. I messed something up. I shouldn't have pushed that price. I'm going to lose this deal, and my manager will think I can't handle big accounts. Your shoulders rise, your breathing gets shallow, and you're tempted to send a panicky follow-up or complain in the team chat. Instead, you pause and run the script: fact, I sent an email at 9 a.m. Fact, they haven't replied yet. Story, they hate my work and this is going to blow up. I actually don't know that yet. With that tiny distinction, you can decide to give it until tomorrow, or to send a calm, short follow-up instead of spiraling. The same pattern shows up at home. Your partner walks in, drops their bag, and doesn't say much. Fact, they're quiet tonight. Story, they're mad at me, or they're bored with this relationship, or I've done something wrong. If you act as if the story is fact, you might start a fight that didn't need to happen. If you notice the difference, you can ask a real question instead, like you seem quiet, tired, or something else. Your tiny action for today is to catch one moment where your brain rushes to a negative story and write it down in 2 lines. Line 1 starts with fact and includes only what an unbiased camera would have recorded. Line 2 starts with story and includes the meaning you're tempted to attach. Don't correct it yet, just see the difference. Once you're mapping triggers and separating fact from story, the next change is to build in an actual pause between feeling and reacting. The claim is that a reliable pause phrase, repeated often, can act like a small speed bump in your nervous system. You still feel the hit, but you don't launch straight into your usual comeback, shutdown, or impulse move. This works because your brain and body respond strongly to practice language. When you rehearse one short line in calm moments, you're laying down a track that's easier to find when things get heated. Instead of trying to invent wisdom on the spot, you reach for a phrase you've already chosen. That phrase doesn't need to be profound, it just needs to be consistent and believable. Over time, saying it becomes a cue for your body to do the same thing each time: breathe, delay, and choose. Here's a simple script you can try: I'm going to pause for 10 seconds before I respond. It's plain, honest, and specific. You're not pretending you're fine. You're naming the pause as an action, which makes it feel less like weakness and more like a move you're making on purpose. Picture a group text with your siblings about your aging parents' care. Money is tight, tempers are short, and one brother sends a message that reads as if you never do enough. You feel your face flush. Your thumbs hover over the keyboard, already drafting a list of everything you have done and everything he hasn't. Instead, you silently repeat your pause phrase: You literally count to 10 while you look away from the screen. In that tiny window, your heart rate drops just enough for you to notice your options. You might decide to step away for an hour. You might decide to reply with one calm boundary about what you can and can't do. What you don't do is fire off the nuclear response that keeps this argument going for days. You can even say your pause phrase out loud with people who are close to you. If your partner makes a comment that hits a sore spot, you might say that you heard what they said and that you're going to pause before you respond. That sounds simple, but it sends two messages at once: you're engaged, and you're refusing to be dragged into a reflex fight. Over time, people around you learn that you're training a new habit, and you feel less pressure to be perfectly calm every second. Your tiny action for today is to pick one pause phrase and rehearse it out loud 3 times when you're calm, maybe while you're driving, walking the dog, or washing dishes. Then, before the day ends, use it in a real moment, even if the trigger is small, like a slow cashier or a delayed train. A pause by itself is useful, but it can also leave you sitting in a pool of adrenaline with nowhere for that energy to go. The next move is to redirect the charge into something you've chosen ahead of time. The claim here is that when you give your triggered energy a specific job, move your body, right, fix one small thing, you reduce the pressure to explode on whoever or whatever is in front of you. This works because emotion isn't just in your thoughts, it lives in your muscles, breathing, and posture. When you get provoked, your body prepares for action whether you act or not. If you only sit still and grind your teeth, the tension tends to come out sideways later, usually toward the people closest to you. A planned redirect gives your body a way to complete the stress cycle without destroying your relationships or your reputation at work. Here's a script you can use after your pause phrase: I'm going to put this surge into one small, useful action. It doesn't have to be heroic. The point is that you decide, in advance, where the current is going instead of letting it short-circuit your day. Imagine you're stuck in rush hour traffic on a winter evening, headlights stretching for miles in front of you. Someone cuts in without signaling, almost clipping your bumper, then throws their hands up like you're the problem. Your chest tightens, your jaw locks, and you feel an urge to speed up and teach them a lesson. You catch yourself, use your pause phrase, and then run the redirect line about using this surge for one small action. You roll your shoulders, take a deeper breath, and decide that as soon as you get home, you'll spend 5 minutes clearing up that pile of mail that's been bothering you, or you'll do a quick bodyweight workout while dinner is in the oven. Instead of chasing the other driver, you're using the same energy to improve your own space. At work, the redirect can be even more direct. A Slack message from your boss might land badly and make you feel disrespected. After your pause, instead of sending a snarky reply, you might channel that energy into tightening up the document they commented on or drafting a clear agenda for the next check-in so you feel more prepared. The sense that you're doing something useful softens the urge to fire back. Your tiny action for today is to decide on 2 or 3 redirect options that fit your life: short movement, quick cleanup, focused work on one task, and write them on the same page as your trigger map. The next time you feel that surge, pick one and do it for just 5 minutes. So far we've talked about inner habits, but a huge number of modern triggers arrive through screens. The claim in this section is that setting simple rules for how and when you respond to digital messages can drastically reduce how often you take the bait. You can't control who emails, texts, or DMs you, but you can control how fast you answer and in what state of mind. This works because instant responses are usually emotional responses. When you feel a sting from a message and answer within seconds, you're letting the most triggered part of you speak for the calmer part that will show up later. By building in short, default delays for certain kinds of messages, you give the calmer part a chance to arrive before you commit words to a screen. That protects your relationships and your own peace of mind. Here's a script you can quietly repeat when something spicy lands in your inbox: I don't have to answer this right now, I'll respond after I cool off. This doesn't mean ghosting people. It means you're choosing the timing that lets you answer as the version of yourself you actually respect. Picture this: it's 10:30 p.m., and you're scrolling in bed. A text comes in from someone you've been dating casually, saying in a blunt way that you're bad at communicating. Your heart jumps. You were finally relaxing, and now you feel attacked. You start drafting a long message explaining your schedule, your stress, all the times you did respond. Instead, you repeat your line in your head, put your phone face down, turn on a podcast, and go to sleep. The next morning, with coffee in hand and a clearer head, you decide whether this is a conversation you want to have and, if so, how to keep it concise and honest instead of defensive and messy. The same rule applies at work. A client might send a blunt email at 6:45 p.m. about a missed detail in a proposal, implying that you're careless. Rather than firing back on your phone in the parking lot, you mark the message as unread and tell yourself you'll draft a reply during a focused block tomorrow morning. When you sit down at your desk, you can check the actual facts, own any real mistake, and answer without sarcasm or hidden resentment. Your tiny action for today is to pick one category of messages, maybe after-hours work emails, ex-partner texts, or family group chats, and set a default response window, like only replying during the day or waiting at least 15 minutes. Write it down near your trigger map and test it once this week. Triggers aren't only digital, of course. Some of the hardest ones come in real-time conversations, especially with people you care about or rely on. The claim here is that learning one or two boundary lines you can say out loud lets you protect the pause even when the other person keeps pushing. Instead of matching their volume or their speed, you commit to your own tempo. This works because many arguments spin out not from the original issue, but from the pace and tone. When someone raises their voice, talks over you, or keeps repeating the same accusation, your body interprets that as a threat and shifts into fight or flight. If you keep matching them, the energy escalates until both of you are saying things you don't mean. A practiced boundary line can slow the whole interaction down without you having to disappear or agree with something that doesn't sit right. Here's a script you can use when things start to heat up. I'm not going to argue about this right now, let's come back to it later. It doesn't blame, diagnose, or insult. It simply names what you will and will not do. Imagine you're at a family dinner. Your aunt makes a pointed comment about your career choices in front of everyone, suggesting that you just do not like stability. A cousin adds a joke about you still figuring things out. You feel cornered and humiliated, and part of you wants to clap back with all the ways their lives aren't as impressive as they pretend. Instead, you feel the trigger, remember your training, and calmly say your boundary line. Then you redirect the conversation to a neutral topic or quietly excuse yourself to step outside. You haven't solved the whole family dynamic, but you've refused to take the bait in that moment. In a workplace setting, this same line can protect you in meetings. Suppose a colleague keeps interrupting you and challenging your numbers in a way that feels less like collaboration and more like performance. Rather than snapping that they would know the answer if they had read the report, you use your boundary line and suggest a follow-up one-on-one to go through the data. You're still willing to be accountable, but you're not doing it in a public showdown that leaves you rattled for hours. Your tiny action for today is to practice saying your boundary line out loud when you're alone, even if it feels awkward. Repeat it 3 times with a calm tone and steady breathing. The next time someone tries to pull you into a heated back and forth, test the line once and notice what happens. There's one more kind of trigger that's easy to overlook, the ones you give yourself. No text, no comment, no eye roll, just a memory, an image, or a sentence in your own head that lights you up. The claim in this section is that you can use the same skills on your inner critic that you use on other people. Name the pattern, insert a pause, and redirect your attention. This works because your brain doesn't distinguish much between an attack from outside and an attack from inside. If you replay an embarrassing moment from last year or imagine a future disaster in high definition, your heart rate and muscle tension respond as if it's happening now. Stoic writers like Seneca warned against suffering more in imagination than in reality. When you learn to treat internal spirals as triggers, not truth, you gain back hours of focus and sleep. Here's a script you can use when your own thoughts start poking old wounds. This is a mental rerun, not reality. I'm going to shift my focus. You're not arguing with the thought or trying to prove it wrong. You're labeling it as something your mind is playing, like a show you've already seen. Imagine you're lying awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling. Suddenly, your brain plays a highlight reel of every awkward comment you've made in the last 6 months, or every time you felt small in front of your boss. Your stomach knots, and you feel a wave of shame, even though nothing is actually happening in the room. You notice the pattern and quietly repeat your script, then deliberately bring your attention to something neutral and physical, the feeling of the sheets, the sound of the fan, and the rhythm of your breathing. During the day, internal triggers often show up around performance. You're about to give a presentation on Zoom, and your mind whispers that you are going to blow it and everyone will see you're not qualified. That thought is a trigger too. Instead of taking the bait and scrambling your slides in a panic, you run your script, ground yourself in a few slow exhales, and direct your attention back to the next concrete step: sharing your screen, greeting the group, explaining your first point clearly. Your tiny action for today is to catch one internal spiral: the late night replay, the catastrophizing before a meeting, or the harsh self-talk after a small mistake, and write down the first sentence that started it. Then write your counter script next to it using the line above. Say it once out loud today and see how it feels for you. Let's put these pieces together in one real story. Picture Alex, a project manager in Toronto juggling a demanding job, shared custody of 2 kids, and aging parents a province away. For years, Alex has been known in the family as the hothead, the one who will send a cutting text and then regret it all night. One Sunday night, Alex is already on edge. The kids are arguing over homework, the laundry isn't done, and there's a client presentation first thing Monday morning. At 8:15 p.m., the phone buzzes. It's a group text from siblings about their mom's upcoming medical appointment. One brother writes, "Since I'm the only one who actually shows up, I guess I'll handle this too." The familiar rush hits, heat in the chest, pressure in the throat, the instant story: they never see what I do. In the past, this would go one way. Alex would fire off a long message listing every sacrifice, the chat would explode, and sleep would be ruined. This time, there's a pause. Earlier that week, Alex started a trigger map after a tense call with the same brother. One entry reads, "Trigger, being accused of not caring about family." Physical signs: heat in chest, clenched jaw. Usual reaction: long defensive texts. Seeing that in memory, Alex thinks, it's this pattern again. Alex's thumbs hover over the keyboard, and the practice line appears: "I'm going to pause for 10 seconds before I respond." The count to 10 feels awkward but possible. By the time 10 is up, the urge to unload has dropped from a 10 to maybe a 6. Then comes the redirect: "I'm going to put this surge into one small, useful action." Alex puts the phone face down and spends 5 minutes filling out an online form for their mom's insurance, something that will actually help with the appointment. The adrenaline lands in completed paperwork instead of fresh drama. When the form is done, Alex returns to the phone with a slower pulse. Fact/story training kicks in. Fact: brother said he feels like the only one showing up. Story: he thinks I'm selfish and useless. With that split clear, Alex types a short text: "I can't take the lead on this appointment, but I can handle the follow-up calls with insurance and the pharmacy this week." No sarcasm, no history, just one boundary and one concrete offer. The chat quiets down. Another sibling replies, "Thanks, that helps." Alex still feels a little irritated, but there's no late-night argument and no shame spiral. The next morning, there's enough energy left for the client's presentation. Same family, same pressure, same brother, different outcome, built from the trigger map, the pause phrase, and one deliberate redirect. You've just walked through a different way of dealing with provocation. Instead of assuming that a trigger means you have to explode or shut down, you've seen that it can be mapped, named, and managed. We started by treating your hotspots as data, not proof that something is wrong with you. Then you learned to separate bare facts from the fast stories your mind throws on top, so that feelings and meaning don't automatically blur together. You added a pause phrase that slows your next move by a few seconds, and you gave your body a redirect so that all that energy has somewhere useful to go. You also practice setting simple rules around digital messages and speaking one clear boundary line in tense conversations. Finally, you watched those pieces work together in a single evening where the outcome changed even though the family and the workload stayed the same. Now it's time to make this real in your own life. First, do today's step: create a one-page trigger map before you go to sleep tonight. Write down at least 3 situations from the last week where you felt hooked, plus the physical signs and your usual reaction. Second, do today's step: choose one pause phrase and say it out loud 3 times somewhere private, then use it once in the next 24 hours on a small trigger. You're not trying to be perfect, you're just proving to yourself that the speed bump exists. Third, do today's step: pick one redirect option that takes 5 minutes or less: short walk, quick tidy up, or focused work on one small task, and test it the next time you feel your chest tighten or your jaw clench. Notice what happens to the urge to fire back. When you're ready for a next lesson, a natural follow-up topic is Stoic planning, How to design your days and weeks so that you're not living at the edge of burnout, where every trigger feels bigger than it needs to be. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next lesson.